I got to say, today was not the day for one of the Victorian government's medical advisors to smirk. Smirk as he dismissed the possible cure for this coronavirus. Not today, when the Premier announced 24 more Victorians have been killed by the virus.
They are comprised of one female in their 60s, 3 males in their 70s, 3 females and 7 males in their 80s, 6 females and 4 males in their 90s. 21 of those 24 fatalities are linked to aged care outbreaks.
Another 24 deaths, but notice again how everyone tends to skate over that sort of thing now. 24 deaths. Oh, yeah, but what about the level of infections? Just 149 now? Well, phew, that's all right then. It's coming down. It's coming down slowly.
3 days under 150 is not bad, and, I think they'll continue on their downward trend.
It's not too bad. As for the dead, well, they are old, aren't they? 10 were in their 90s. Most in aged care homes. What do you expect? Which suggests to me, if I've got that attitude right out there, that once again, even in Victoria, people are now ready to think about the real way to fight the virus, which is protect the aged. Particularly in aged care homes, 3/4 of Victoria's 462 dead were right there. So protect them as best we can, but for the rest, some social distancing, hand washing. Be careful, but otherwise, let's get on with living our lives. But I mentioned the smirk. You would think that this death toll should make the Victorian government and its advisors desperate. I mean, desperate to investigate any potential treatment suggested by doctors better qualified than themselves. But you would think wrong. There are 2 such potential treatments, both of them very cheap and plentiful. One's the antimalarial hydroxychloroquine with zinc, and the anti-lice ivermectin with zinc. But enter Julian Elliott, head of the National COVID-19 Clinical Evidence Task Force. Now, I reckon Elliott was brought along by Premier Daniel Andrews today to the press conference, presumably to trash anyone suggesting that the Andrews government had been ignoring treatments that could have saved many of these lives and saved more right now. And Elliott was happy to trash hydroxychloroquine.
One of the things I think we can be proud of here in Australia and Victoria is that we haven't jumped onto the latest bandwagon because of a particular trend on social media. We make a recommendation that hydroxychloroquine should not be used, certainly outside of a research setting, because there's now substantial information that it's not effective and it does have side effects.
Oh, if it's just something on a social media bandwagon, such certainty about a treatment recommended by quite a few experts, more credentialed than Associate Professor Elliott. So it was a bit embarrassing for him, I guess, that the International Journal of Antimicrobial Agents has just reported the results of a major trial of hydroxychloroquine involving 8,000 patients in Belgium. And guess what? It says the drug worked, cut deaths by more than 1/3 to 17.7% of patients compared to 27% without the drug. That's patients in hospital, already presumably quite sick. And as I pointed out before, Elliott's task force did some weird cherry picking when it said hydroxychloroquine didn't work, it was a health hazard. It checked only 9 studies that showed the drug had little effect, but ignored others that showed that it did work. It also included a study that inexplicably, people are asking questions about this, gave patients potentially lethal overdoses of the drug. And crucially, none of the studies included zinc, nor in fact did those encouraging Belgian results. And zinc is important because hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin both are zinc ionophores. They help to get the zinc into the cells. The zinc can't do it alone. These drugs do it for it, and the zinc then stops virus replication, or that's the theory. Now, unfortunately, there's a pattern here of patronisingly dismissing potential treatments that could cut the dying. Chief Health Officer Brett Sutton did exactly the same last Friday when he was asked about ivermectin, which is promoted by Professor Thomas Borody, who just happens to be a genius that I talked to last night, who developed the world's first cure for peptic ulcers. Now, asked last Friday about that drug, Sutton again smirked.
I know ivermectin's been shown in a test tube in vitro to have great effectiveness against coronavirus. My understanding is that the dose that might be required in humans puts it into toxic levels. And so at the dose that it's given, it may not have effectiveness.
Again, Sutton ignored the role of zinc. He ignored Borody's clinical evidence that the drug had worked. It hadn't been at toxic levels for his patients, or the patients he's referring to. And as Borody told me later.
But at this stage, when we have death all over the place, and there are some trials that were comparing one therapy with another, this is not good advice. This is advice by someone who has an illusion of knowledge rather than having knowledge of trials.
Now, I do not know if these drugs worked. I've said it many times. But I do know there are scientists who say they do and others that say they don't. But when we have dead people all over the place, a little less knocking and a lot more checking would be the right thing to do.